Hi, it's Charl from Pangolin Photo Safaris, and in my hand is a Canon EOS R6 Mark II. I've been waiting to get a chance and test this camera out in the field as I think of getting one in addition to my R3. Thank you Canon South Africa for the opportunity to use this pre-production model, and please know that we are not sponsored by Canon and give our unbiased opinion. So in this video, I will highlight some of the differences to the predecessor, the Canon R6, and if these differences play a vital role in wildlife photography and make it worth upgrading to or buying this camera. And of course, as always, I will show you plenty of wildlife imagery taken with the Canon R6 too. Let's first look at the camera body itself. It is pretty much identical to the R6 in terms of size, weight and button layout. The only thing that have changed is the on-off plus lock switch, which is now situated on the top of the camera rather than the left side. Thankfully, they have given the R6 II a dedicated switch between photo and video mode, which is a massive plus for anyone that often needs to change quickly between taking images and filming. On the R6, it used to be quite a pain doing it via the modal, and I'm very happy for this change. There is a new multifunction shoe on top to connect microphones or flashes wirelessly, and the autofocus joystick has been reworked and offers a slightly better feel. Always a plus when you need to shift the focus point around. Disappointingly for me, again, there are two identical SD UHS 2 card slots instead of one faster CF Express Type B, which, considering the fast frame rate and strong video capability of this camera, would have been extremely helpful. Another positive aspect, however, is the improved battery life. Although the R6 II uses the exact same battery as the R6, Canon has somehow managed to increase the battery life. I already managed to capture more than 1,500 raw images plus a few video clips on one battery. The touchscreen and electronic viewfinder are identical to the predecessor, but new on the R6 II is the ability to simulate an optical viewfinder to give a more SLR-like experience. Same as the higher priced R3 offers. For me, this upgrade is, however, less important because I would never compromise seeing the exposure changing in the viewfinder, which would be disabled when using this feature. Now to the most interesting improvements of the Canon R6 II. The camera can shoot double the frame rate of the original R6. So instead of 20 frames per second, it can fire off 40 frames per second when the electronic shutter is engaged, with the compromise of dropping down to 12-bit retail to achieve this. Nevertheless, this is amazing for any wildlife action scenario, capturing the perfect frame. Naturally, Canon also gives slower options using the electronic shutter like 20 frames per second or 5 frames per second for moments when you don't need to capture the fast action. Testing the camera, I basically had it set to 40 frames per second almost at all times, and unsurprisingly, the buffer filled rather quickly when holding the finger down. About 75 RAW files and 190 JPEGs can be stored before the buffer hits. However, when shooting small bursts, it works excellent, and in the end, a good wildlife photographer should be able to anticipate the right moments to fire away rather than blindly holding the shutter button down. A nice addition which the R6 lacks is that you can now choose to have a simulated shutter sound when taking images instead of complete silent shooting in electronic shutter. With the mechanical shutter, nothing has changed, which means the camera will still shoot 12 frames per second max, same as on the first version. There are slight improvements in the autofocus system of the Canon R6 II as well. Although the camera uses the same dual pixel CMOS autofocus too than the R6, subject tracking has been refined and works faster. I found it to be very similar in performance than my Canon R3, which is excellent news thinking of getting one of these as my second body. Canon has also added more subjects for tracking like airplanes and trains, but more interesting for wildlife photography is the addition of horses and zebras that I tested in the field and can confirm that it works well. More so, you can now prioritize the left or right eye of a subject and use an auto setting that is supposed to detect what subject you photograph, and therefore apply the best algorithm. So basically, if you want to switch quickly from an animal to a person, the camera will apply the correct subject tracking without you having to change this in the menu, something that is not possible to do on the R6. Perhaps interesting for some of you that own the RF 800mm f11 lens is that the focus area is quite a bit larger than on the R6. I presume that it will be the same for the RF 600mm, but I haven't specifically tested it. And lastly, my favorite autofocus update is one that applies when shooting video. You know when you film a subject that walks out of the frame and the camera starts focus hunting and most times jump to the background. The R6 II includes a new subject autofocus detect priority mode that will keep the camera from refocusing once the subject left the frame. A neat feature. The Canon R6 II has a new and improved full-frame sensor with a more competitive 24 million pixel versus the 20 million pixel of the R6. It unfortunately doesn't have a stack sensor like the R3, but at the price point of $2,500 it was also not to be expected. And although it is only a small increase in pixels, it's still an upgrade from the R6. Coming to the image quality, I want to mention that I have used the camera in combination with Canon's RF 100-500, which will probably be a popular combination for wildlife photography. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the image quality as the camera produces photographs with fine details, great color and sharpness. I personally am satisfied with the number of pixels and rather compromise on cropping in a lot than having to deal with excessive image files slowing down my workflow. Also, the noise is less of an issue on the lower megapixel cameras. I've tested different high ISO values shooting in low light, and as you can see, this photo looks very usable with sufficient details and no obvious color distortion. As for rolling shutter, despite the much faster frame rate of the 40 frames per second, Canon stated that the rolling shutter is improved over the R6, and in my test I found it to be very minor and almost not visible, at least when taking stills. Many of you have probably heard of the Pro Capture mode that was introduced by Olympus cameras. When Canon announced that they now also have a pre-recording function on the R6 II, I was rather excited to test this new feature. Within the menu, it is located under the RAW burst mode. Once enabled, the camera now groups a burst of raw images together and presents itself in a playback mode under a single thumbnail image with a special icon. You can now browse the series of images and select the best shot of the sequence to save. If you want to use the actual pre-recording function, you need to enable the pre-shooting as well, which once the shutter is halfway pressed, will pre-record images for half a second at 30 frames per second, so around 15 frames before you fully press the shutter button. Needless to say that this is super helpful trying to nail a decisive moment such as a kingfisher diving in or coming out of the water. However, this function is only available when you're using the electronic shutter, and since all images are embedded into a large raw burst file that common software such as Adobe Lightroom won't recognize, you would have to extract the raw frames one by one, either in camera or with Canon Digital Photo Professional. Of course, this is a bit of an extra step, but truly speaking, I am happy to have this feature and this won't put me off from using it. Plus, I have assigned a dedicated button where I can quickly switch the pre-shooting on and off as I need it. Also, the video capabilities have been improved on the Canon R6 II. It allows now for filming in 4K 60 uncropped and an oversample from 6K instead of oversample from 5K and cropped on the R6. There is even a possibility of recording 6K ProRes RAW video via the HDMI port and an Atomos Ninja recorder. High-speed mode in Full HD has been boosted to 180 frames per second, an improvement over the 120 frames per second of the R6, and a feature I like to use a lot when filming wildlife, because it allows the viewer to fully take in fast action. Great news is also that the Canon EOS R6 II doesn't have a 30-minute limit per clip anymore, and that due to an improved circuit design, heat is managed more efficiently and the overheating doesn't pose much of a problem anymore. During filming with the R6 II, I never once had an overheating symbol show up, and according to cinematographers that have tested for this specifically, you should be able to film in 4K 60p continuously for at least 40 minutes. Same as on the photo side, with video you now also have the option to pre-record 3 to 5 seconds before you hit record. A great perk once again filming fast wildlife. Plus, breathing compensation has been added to, limited to a selection of lenses compatible for now. To wrap it up, will I buy a Canon R6 II as my second camera body next to my main body, the Canon R3? Absolutely. For me, at the price point of the camera and the features that are packed in, it is an absolutely no-brainer. It has got the same number of megapixels than my R3. The autofocus performance felt on par, which is one of the most important features for me photographing wildlife on a daily basis. Plus the faster frame rate, upgrade video specs and include perks like the pre-recording function are all convincing me that this camera body will be a great addition in my camera bag. So, if you are someone that wants to upgrade from a DSLR system, or perhaps you just start out in wildlife photography and this full-frame camera falls into your budget, chances are that the Canon R6 II will be the right camera for you. Now, is it worth the upgrade from the original R6? I'd say it depends where your priority lies. Obviously, if you have watched my review of the Canon R6, you know that I found this camera to be absolutely suited for wildlife and birds in flight, and I still believe this after having tested the R6 II. So you should ask yourself if any of the improvements and added features will be worth the extra bucks for you. Do you ever use the video functions? Do you need 40 frames per second and pre-record function because your priority lies in wildlife action? Or are you managing just fine with the system you are using right now? It is a difficult one to answer, and I personally would probably go for the update just because of the simple improvements like the easy switch between photo and video mode, which I know would save me plenty of shots and frustration to deal with. The faster frame rate installs plus the 180p slow motion video are also features that I'm excited about and that would make upgrading worthwhile for me. But in the end, you will need to make the decision for yourself. I definitely hope though that this video helped you in the decision making progress, and if you have any other questions, please feel free to leave me a comment down below. Also, if you like to come and join us at Pangolin Photo Safari sometime, check in the link in the description. It would be lovely to meet you. Cheers, and until next time.